Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Friday, January 31st. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over the Eastern All-Stars in the NBA. In this segment, we turn our attention to the Western Conference. The West has a lot of old heads over there. We're going to talk about if they deserve to get in and all their accomplishments. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday, January 30th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the Western side of the NBAAll-Star selections. And this one, again, I think they did a pretty good job on. There's a couple things that you had to have in there. There's a couple guys that I think deserved to get in that did not get in. But overall, I think the NBA All-Star teams this year were really close to perfect. Of course, you're never going to be able to get it all the way perfect. But starting off with the starters. Point guard Steph Curry finds his way back into the starting lineup, and he's a guy that's been amazing. Of course, over the course of his career, but this season is no exception. This is probably the worst Golden State squad that he's been on since their dynasty began, dating back to probably 2012, 2013. This is a really good Steph Curry season. Now, it isn't the best Steph Curry season. It isn't an MVP level Steph Curry season, but he's a guy that I think deserves to be named an all-star starter for what he's been able to do with this team as well, even though some of his stats might not line up with the best in the league at every single point. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the MVP frontrunner, also named a starter. Of course, the MVP frontrunner named a starter. I don't think anybody has any objections to this. He's been amazing all year for the number one seed Oklahoma City Thunder. A huge reason why they've been able to have this turnaround so quickly. Was traded over from the LA Clipper side of the Paul George trade. Obviously worked out a little bit better for them than it has for the Clippers so far. LeBron James is back in the starting lineup as well. 21-time All-Star, 21-time All-Star starter. LeBron James, the ageless wonder, continues to just do the impossible, right? He's been amazing this year. He's over 20 points a game. He's been incredibly productive on offense, on defense, rebounding, assists, every single number that you possibly could look at. He's been breaking all these records for 40-year-old players. He is amazing. LeBron James, an all-star starter, and he deserves to be there as well. Kevin Durant, out of the Phoenix Suns, is also an all-star starter. You're getting that big three from the Team USA back together here. Kevin Durant has been amazing all season. This is a Phoenix Suns team that has been kind of iffy, but when Kevin Durant is on the court, they are much closer to being a title contending team than they are to being a play-in team. He has been that kind of player for them this year, and he has been the main reason why the Phoenix Suns are even competitive at all. The final starter is, of course, Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic, best player in the world. Nikola Jokic continues to do dominant things. He's arguably playing the best ball of his entire career. He's doing it without the best production from some of his co-stars. Jamal Murray hasn't been his best. Russell Westbrook has been good, but hasn't been completely consistent. He's dealt with injuries from Aaron Gordon in the early season. This is a really good year from Jokic, and he's deservingly so a starter out of Denver. Getting into the reserves here, Anthony Edwards headlines the reserves there. He has been awesome this season, and one of the big things about him this year is that he's developed a three-point shot. That was one of the things that wasn't really there for him last year in their deep playoff run, but now he's one of the most high-volume, high-efficiency three-point scorers in the entire NBA. He's over 40% from three, around 42%. He's developed that shot in one offseason, and he is going to be a guy that's going to be a problem in the league for a very, very long time. Anthony Davis also makes it as a reserve. We'll have to see if he ends up playing due to his injuries. That could open the door for a guy like a Domantas Sabonis or a Norman Powell to find their way onto the All-Star squad, but we will see what happens after he gets reevaluated. But Anthony Davis, I don't think anyone is arguing, deserves to make a spot. Him and LeBron James at the top of the Lakers have been amazing this year, right? He's been one of the best on both sides of the court, Anthony Davis has. He's been probably the best Laker this season, even better than LeBron, I think. But what he's been able to do as far as an energy player, as far as a defender, really, has been so valuable to this Lakers squad, and he deserves to make it. James Harden held down the fort over there with the Los Angeles Clippers. That was crazy to me. Right? The fact that he was able to turn back the clock and be that number one star again when they were waiting on a guy like Kawhi Leonard to come back from injury that he was out indefinitely for at the beginning of the season. Norman Powell has stepped up huge, and he's a guy that I think deserves a couple nods. But what James Harden has been able to do as the leader of that team is amazing. Keeping the Clippers in a playoff spot, in a playoff eligible run here, that is really cool to see. Jaren Jackson Jr. From the Memphis Grizzlies makes his team's all-star spot. It would have been Ja Morant probably. The Memphis Grizzlies had to have one. I think this Grizzlies team is pretty balanced. What JJJ is able to do on the offensive and defensive end is probably made him the obvious choice. Without Ja Morant being injured as much as he has, it's a little bit harder to find some more options on the Memphis Grizzlies team, but JJJ has been amazing this season, as he always has, his third All-Star selection. Alperen Sengun, out of the Houston Rockets, that's their lone All-Star this year. Sengun is a guy that I think got in because the Rockets needed one. The Rockets needed to get a guy, but they're a young team, and they've really split up the workload. But what Sengun's been able to do this season, people call him a baby Jokic for a reason, right? He's not as good as Jokic, but he does a lot of the same things as a big man, being able to pass, being able to shoot, being able to guard a lot of different players all over the floor. Sengun is a guy that finally gets his first All-Star nod, and he's still really young. He's still getting a lot of he's still got a long way to grow. This is a Rockets team that's going to be good for a long time if they can continue to develop and keep that talent. As well as another young guy making his first All-Star appearance. How about Jalen Williams? Jalen Williams from the OKC Thunder, their second member. He's been that second star, right? When Shea's been amazing, he's been that MVP kind of guy. But what Jalen Williams has been able to do this season is nothing short of great, especially on the defensive end. One of the best guys at picking your pocket in the entire league, Jalen Williams. Congratulations to him on making that All-Star spot. And the final one, who else but Victor Wembanyama? Victor Wembanyama makes his first All-Star game in his second season. Victor Wembanyama continues to grow. He continues to get better at basketball every single time he steps out there, and he's a guy that is drawing more and more attention around the league. He's a guy that has lived up to the hype. He's lived up to the hype of being potentially the greatest basketball player ever, right? He's not all the way there yet, but you can see the potential, see the way he grows. You see the way players are demanding trades to go and play with him. He's going to be a special player in the league for a long time, and he makes his first NBA All-Star game. But a couple of those reserves that got snubbed, and we kind of touched on it a little bit. Domantas Sabonis, he gets left out of the All-Star game yet again. Domantas Sabonis has been a leader over there for the Kings, averaging a double-double basically every single night. He has been the guy that they rely on, along with De'Aaron Fox, who now wants out. But Domantas Sabonis has been a huge part of what they do, and since they've started to become more successful, he just does not make the cut. But the guy that I think really should have gotten in is Norman Powell. Norman Powell is averaging 24 points per game. Norman Powell with the Los Angeles Clippers has been as much of the reason that they've been good as James Harden has. And I understand that there's only enough room, and you're going to go to James Harden, the more recognizable one, the one that is getting, more of that fan vote over there. But arguably, Norman Powell has been the bigger reason why they've been able to hold firm. James Harden is a guy that it's tough to have him do it all on his own. What Norman Powell's been able to do as a 1A or a 1B kind of scoring options is huge for them, and it's the reason why they've been able to find themselves in this playoff position as they get deeper and deeper into the year. Kawhi Leonard comes back and they're still alive. That is huge for them. But again, overall, there's just not a place for these people to go. Maybe you put them in over Şengün, but you need a Houston player to come in. They're in the number 2 spot in the West. You can't just not have a player from them. With Anthony Edwards being injured, maybe they find their way in over them. Maybe Norman Powell finds his way in. Maybe Domantas Sabonis finds his way in. But we're just going to have to see about that. But again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of this. Who was the biggest snub in the All-Star game this year? Who out of the West do you think should have and shouldn't have made it? I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we turn our attention to some news coming out of the NFL, some coaching issues, and some wide receiver news from around the world of the NFL. We'll be right back here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.